everyone. All right, welcome to a very special session where the Bubble founders, Josh and Emmanuel, have somehow agreed to answering any questions asked by the audience. They're very brave. So if you want to participate, you want to get your phone out with the Ring Central app, and you'll be able to ask questions directly in that app that will then be asked to the founders. So again, if you want to participate, please pull out your phones. In the AMA spirit, I sat down with the founders this morning as well and learned a few fun facts. So, did you know that in 2006, Emmanuel was an editorial model in Japan? Definitely do not Google search for those images. Definitely don't do that. Also, when Josh was in middle school, he and his friends started a video game business making video games, and they were able to sell exactly 0 games. It's a good thing that Josh has since learned from those failures and created a pretty good company, I would say. And lastly, I was able to get some time with our moderator, Carly, and she was most definitely not responsible for the confetti that went off during the keynote. 100% was not her. So yeah, without further ado, please join me in giving Josh, Emmanuel, and Carly a warm Bubblecon welcome.
Hello, Bubblecon. I'm Confetti Carly. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Carly. I lead product marketing and content here at Bubble. I'm so excited to be here with everyone today and joined by our amazing founders who, let's give another round of applause for them. As Nick just mentioned, some quick housekeeping. If you want to ask questions, please make sure you have the Ring Central app downloaded if you're here in person. Make sure you're asking questions through the chat, not the Q&A section. So as we wait for some of those questions to come in, I have a question to get us started. As both of you think about the year ahead, I want to hear, what are you most excited about?
Both of us, or?
Yeah, why don't you start, Emmanuel?
Okay, I'll start. It's going to be harder for Josh to respond. 2 things. I'm excited about some of the product launches we are doing right now and that will come into general availability for next year. Mobile and AI in particular, I think are super exciting. The first time Josh and I met, before we decided to partner, we talked about whether we should do mobile or not, and that was in June 2012. Well, I'm very happy that we're finally there after all this time. And then at the personal level, we actually made a few changes on the way we run the company, and so I'm stepping back into managing product. So in some ways, we're going back to the original story, the structure that we had, where Josh leads engineering and I lead product. And I'm very excited about stepping back into product. I've been away for it for a few years. Well, we had other things to build on the business, but that's where my heart has always been, and very excited to get back to it.
Yeah, I'm also extremely excited about Emmanuel getting more involved on the product side. I think the core of Bubble has always been our product, and the fact that the 2 of us are going to be tag teaming it for the rest of the year is awesome, and I am really excited to sort of build on the announcements we made today so that a year from now, when you look at the Bubble editor and the way it integrates with AI and mobile, I think it's going to be pretty clear to everyone that this is the future of how software is going to be built, and I am so excited to work night and day over the next year to make that happen.
We've covered a lot of topics at Bubblecon over the last 2 days, so I was hoping that both of you could share a little bit about your priorities and Bubble priorities and what's that going to look like over the next year.
Yeah, happy to take that. So we are focusing and reorganizing our engineering team around sort of the main company priorities. So we're going to have a mobile team, an AI team, a core editor team, and a platform team. And we want to make sure the org structure of our company's engineering lines up very much about what we want to deliver on the product side of things.
Yeah, and at the product level, we really want to invest on our editor. We've always been investing in our editor. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the core product we have. But over time, we've been doing other things, and we want to really make sure we spend most of our resources there, because at the end of the day, if the editor experience is great, everything else will follow. And we're in a very solid place, but I think we can improve things quite a bit.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of questions coming in from the chat around international. So from Hugo, at the last Bubblecon AMA, it was mentioned that server location selection is in development. Any updates on this?
Yeah. So I wish I had like a shorter time horizon to announce this. We are going to make this happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I will say between the last Bubblecon and now, we decided that the reliability and stability of our core platform was more important than expanding server selection, so we've put that as a higher priority. And one of the lessons that we've repeatedly learned is to deliver results for you all, we have to focus and pick our battles. So I am still very much hoping to make server selection on shared hosting, not just enterprise dedicated hosting, something available to everyone. The time horizon I'm thinking is late 2025, but we can't commit to like a specific delivery date at this time. But we're very aware that a lot of you have users, especially in Europe, where this is like a major consideration, and it is very top of mind for us. And as we put together our technical roadmap, we want to get a place where we can deliver that for you all.
From Maurizio, when will the new Bubble editor design be available? Missy talked about this yesterday in her session, but wanted to hear more.
I mean, I'm not going to commit to a timeline like this on the spot. I mean, especially as I step into my new role, I want to make sure I take the time. One thing I'll say is that our approach is to be gradual here, so we're going tab by tab. I mean, we've tried in the past. We had an attempt to do like a full redesign, and it did not go very well. The reason being, it's a very complicated product that we have. Like, if I look at the market, like not many products have our surface area in terms of what it can do, and therefore the number of controls we need to expose to our users, and therefore the complexity of the interface that we have. And so it's pretty risky to change all at once, and so we're not doing that like this. So now it's really about the workflow tab that was released yesterday in beta is one part. I would put some of the responsive work that we have done in the past as another way to not just improve the run mode, but also the editing experience. We have more tabs to think about. The data tab is something that has not been updated yet. Logs also need some love. So the plan is to go tab by tab to get into, at the end, a cohesive experience that I would call a Bubble redesign. And this is something that the plan is to go through that over the next year.
Yeah, to maybe put a little bit of a point on that, the answer is early and often. In other words, like, when are we going to get to the end of the journey? Like, we can't commit to a timeline, but when are you going to see changes? Frequently, because we don't want to, hold off on transformation here.
I know the community is very excited about these updates. Pedro wants to know, are there any plans to localize Bubble into other languages and currencies?
Yeah, I can take that one. Eventually, yes. As we are doing a lot of things on the interface today, probably it's not the first thing we're going to do, like updating the interface. Because from a design standpoint, you need to make sure it works. Like, some languages are going to be much shorter than others. Like, it comes down to this, the number of characters it takes to have something captioned. And we can't really change all those things at the same time. So not anytime soon. Eventually, yes, but not something we'll do for the next year and a half. Also, the other thing I'll point out is if we start translating the product, then you have to support users in the native language, meaning we have to support customer success in French, in Spanish, in Portuguese, and that's a very big endeavor to do this. There is some simplicity by having everything in English. So I don't want to start localizing our product from a language perspective if we cannot do the rest. And so for that, we'll have to wait a little bit. In terms of currencies, it's something we need to look. I need to understand exactly the impact it makes. I don't think we're not in a situation yet where we can localize pricing, in a sense that pricing will still be somewhat the same around the world. If it's about paying in your own currency, it's probably not a major leap for us to do that, but it's not going to change dramatically how affordable Bubble is. So I have to see if that really makes an impact for people. I know some countries are sensitive to this, so if that turns out to be a bigger thing, it's probably something we can do fairly easily. But again, it's more about the caption on the screen than the actual pricing that we use.
From Clint, with the addition of Flusk, as well as the new ability to adjust Bubble's permissions to app data, how much closer does this bring us to HIPAA compliance for healthcare apps in the US?
I can speak to that one. So we'd be super excited to be fully HIPAA compliant. We know that healthcare is a really exciting space, and we know that a lot of you have seen opportunities in healthcare. We're very excited that we're now SOC 2 compliant, which is, onboarding a first compliance framework is a good step down the path. And as the question mentioned, right, like we're making investments in data privacy, improving the overall security of the platform. I can't give you a timeline for HIPAA, and I think it's a little bit dependent on how fast we're able to invest in the platform over the next year or two. But it's definitely something we want to get to eventually. And also, we're willing to support users who get out ahead of us, especially like someone who wants to have an enterprise plan offering and wants to talk to our team about can they drive HIPAA for their own app without Bubble being certified as HIPAA, because they are somewhat separable. So we would love to have those conversations and see what's possible.
From Darlington, any plan to offer a mini enterprise plan or something important enterprise features, but at a smaller and cheaper scale?
I'll take that one. Potentially, we're still learning here, the enterprise space. Enterprise in the sense of non-public facing pricing, like more custom things. So potentially, we have to see what makes sense for customers. I do think there is value in getting people on enterprise plans because we can offer more customized things to them. And so the more we can get on those plans, the better. At the same time, this is pretty costly for us to maintain, and so we need to have a certain price. And so we need to see what the right number is. Today, our enterprise plans start around like $2,500 a month or something. Is there an opportunity to go lower, especially for some markets? Probably, but it's not a decision we'd make lightly because that has long-term effect. So we'll see.
From Ruben, are there plans to build a product discovery feature to give Bubble apps more exposure?
Happy to talk to that one. Short answer is that's a really interesting idea. It's not something that we're actively working towards. Some of our apps, you all are the right top grid audience, but many of your apps, your target user base is not in this crowd, and a product discovery feature would not actually be that useful to get you users. So it's interesting. We'll think about it. I'm guessing it's probably not going to make the top of our list anytime super soon, but I do encourage you all to use our community resources, our community discussion forum to sort of build an audience and work together to help each other become successful.
From Stefan, can virtual attendees get access to the mobile beta this month too? We knew we were going to get this.
I mean, if that was the case, that's what we would have announced, right? Like, and just to give a little clarity into our thinking here and why we're rolling this out gradually. Our strategy with mobile is there's a lot of features that are specific to different use cases, right? Like every single mobile app needs a different set of features. And we want the experience of you building on mobile being that you're not blocked on, hey, I can build 95% of my app, but this one feature is just critical path for me, and that remaining 5% stops me. So the reason we're onboarding people gradually is we want to make sure that our team can keep up with making the feature requests of our early users available. And then we're going to open up super broadly once we're in a place where we're saying yes to most things and most mobile app use cases we see are able to be built on our platform. So that's why we're doing the more gradual rollout. But that said, we want to move as fast as possible. And you all met the mobile team here yesterday. They're working super hard, and I'm optimistic we'll be able to pull people off the waiting list on a pretty fast basis.
Another one about mobile from Pedro. With Bubble's new mobile design, how can users take advantage of existing designs? How can you integrate what's been built for desktop to mobile?
You can take this one too if you want.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can copy paste between desktop and mobile. We're trying, not everything is copy pastable, but a number of visual elements are. The reason it's not like a one-click import is, as the mobile team demonstrated yesterday, we're adding a lot of new elements and paradigms because we want the mobile feature to really feel and act like a native phone. So, we decided not to just take the web and put it on mobile. We think that's like a subpar user experience, but we do want to make it as fluid as possible. So while there will be manual work, you can use tools like copy paste, you can use existing workflows to like minimize the amount of effort to move from web to mobile.
Question from George. What's Bubble's approach to making sure that some of the smaller but meaningful updates, like updates in the editor, get attention alongside the bigger ticket ones?
Well, that's part of the things that I want to work on. Like, I know over time we went back and forth. I think a few years ago we were a lot on like small updates actually, and we've been taking bigger projects. Again, like responsive was one. The new workflow tab is another project that took a lot of effort. And when we do that, we probably spend less time on smaller quality of life improvements. And so I'm planning on taking a look at things to see how we can do both. Now, it's also important to remember we have limited resources and time, and so we can't just do one thing, because if we just do one thing, the other thing is not going to move forward. And big updates are what is going to drive our product forward. So we still need to push on them. So it really comes down to a judgment call for the product team to see where do we want to invest, how often. So it's very top of mind, something I discuss a lot with our product managers and designers today, like these days, to see how we can make more frequent changes for the things that are really blocking people. But again, with a caveat, we cannot do everything.
And Leif wants to know, will there be a public roadmap?
I guess I can take that one and you can maybe jump in.
Yeah.
We've tried doing that a little bit in the past. Like, it is challenging to have something very public that we stick to, because sometimes things happen that mean that we have to change priorities for some reason. And so it's difficult to have something that, I don't want to put something out there that we can't really stick to. And so do we have something firmly saying what the public roadmap is, saying by that date we do this? I think this is a very challenging place to be. Now, at the same time, we do want to share the direction we're heading to. That's what we do at Bubblecon. That's what Josh does often, like every month when he shares what's top of mind. I mean, that hopefully gives the community a sense of what's on our mind and how we're thinking about things. I think at this point we've struck a pretty good balance. We can probably push a little bit harder on being more transparent, but again, with the caveat that we cannot do hard commitments, because if we do that, ultimately it's not going to be good for anyone, because that doesn't give us a flexibility to adjust to circumstances that might require us to do things differently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we are pushing in the direction of more planfulness and more transparency. Like, that's how I would like to see us evolve. And I want to be, I want to build in public for what we're working on today. It's the, 6-month, 12-month, 18-month time horizon that, we adjust more over time. But we want to be continually pushing out our planning horizon and sharing it with you all, because we understand that, like, you guys are looking to us, and when you're trying to figure out for your own roadmaps, what can you build? You need to be aware of what's coming down the pipe from us. So we're pretty cognizant of how important that is to you all, and we're going to create as much transparency as we feel like we can meaningfully commit to in a way that helps you all succeed.
Sandra wants to know when they can expect some work to be done on the API connector.
Not super soon, I think. I think we have other things we want to be doing on the editor before that. I know this is something that is pretty old. I mean, it's something that I built myself maybe 6 years ago at this point, and it looks like it, so I apologize for that. That being said, when I think of all the different things that can make a meaningful impact for our users, and especially as people get into the editor, like have them understand really how to build applications, this is not the highest thing, I think, on the list. When you're at the level where you start thinking about adding your own API connections to an application, that means you've gone through a lot, and I think it's probably fine, even though not the most enjoyable experience, to work in the API connector versus some other things we could be doing. I mean, there are a ton of improvements we could make. These should be one-click integrations, a lot of things we could be doing that we'll get to at some point, but not in the next 3 to 6 months now.
On a slightly different note, both Kate and Matthew wanted to know, what are some major lessons that you've taken from other founders as you've built Bubble and grown Bubble?
I'll just say one word, be patient. It's been 13 years.
Yeah, I mean, we have learned so much, and like I could give phase-specific advice, right? Early stage advice, scaling advice, whatever. But I think like if I had to like pull one lesson, striking the right balance between inventing things from scratch and copying what other successful people have done. Because if you just copy, what's the point? Like, you're not going to create anything great. But if you just innovate, you're going to waste a lot of time and energy reinventing the wheel on things that other companies have already solved. And I think kind of my personal journey as a founder has been getting good at striking that balance. And I hope to keep on making the right calls on when to do which better and better over time.
Kareem wants to know, will the AI assistant be able to build mobile apps?
That is a fantastic question. The answer is day one, no. Our initial release, it is just for web applications, but after that, that's an area we're very excited to build. So yeah, coming soon.
And just a reminder to the audience, please drop in questions as you have them into the app. Another question from Zach, is there a thought to make the Bubble platform open source?
Should I take that one?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so we've thought about Bubble portability and making Bubble a standard, because I think when you sort of look forward to the future of software evolution, I think that's really, really interesting. It's not going to be in the short term, because both for technical and business reasons, it's a very different direction from the way we've architected things today. But as we look to like, what does Bubble look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because we fully intend to be sort of the dominant platform for software creation in 20 years. I think the question of, what does portability look like? What does running Bubble on your own infrastructure look like is something we're going to take a hard look at. But definitely more of a vision down the line question than a today question.
From Angie, would there be any accessibility updates like compliance checks both for mobile and for web?
Not in the very short term, even though accessibility is something that is on our mind. Like, it's something that I know we need to keep improving there. We're not in the next few weeks like doing a major push here. We still need to think carefully about how to do this, but it's something that is on our mind. Yeah.
What I can add to that is, as we're making changes to the editor, both our engineering and design teams have been thinking about like making sure that the evolved editor becomes more and more accessible over time. In terms of building tools to help you all make your apps more accessible, that's something that we think is very interesting, but like Emmanuel said, it's not going to be the next thing on the roadmap.
A question from Nick, and I'm wondering if this is Nick on the Bubble team. On a team of 3 to 5 developers across a bunch of time zones around the world, change management can be really hard. And it would be helpful to be able to see different versions, see which developers are making different changes. So are there any plans to improve the version control system?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very big and complicated piece of software. I mean, GitHub is an entire company in its own, and so for us, it's one part of our editor. So there are a lot of facets to that problem, but yes, this is the kind of thing that we're looking at. We're currently working on a better changelog system, so you can see changes that people have made to ease that. So still a long journey to get to something that is just comprehensive and user-friendly at the same time. It's actually pretty challenging, right? Because think about the number of times you edit an application per day. I mean, and you have to show that in an easily consumable way. But yes, that's one place where we're planning on spending some energy on.
Yeah. I'm very excited about the work the team is sort of actively doing on this. I think there's going to be some cool releases. Also, I would pitch the video for Andrew and Sam's session yesterday, if you missed seeing it in person, about how our team uses Bubble's version control features. Because while there's a lot of stuff that we can move into the tooling itself, and we fully think we should, there's also a lot you can do with how you use it and best practices for using it that can minimize some of the challenges involved with version control across a large team.
In past Q&A, you've both talked about improvements to database speed, scaling, searching. Is there more information on that? Maybe an estimation on timeline? Matthew's asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are pretty much the top priority for our platform team right now is moving off of this sort of outdated piece of technology we use to run stored procedures on databases. And what we've seen in testing is removing that from the stack has massive stability benefits. So from an uptime and avoiding performance degradation perspective, it's huge. But also that it just speeds up queries. So that release is going to be happening over the next couple months, and we're working incrementally. So it's not going to be a big bang thing. It's going to be things that just gradually getting more stable and faster. And then beyond that, we have a roadmap of things to accelerate certain queries even further, things like figuring out the count of the number of items in a database right now is for large collections of things can be somewhat slow, and we have ways of making that faster. That's on the technical roadmap. So I would expect to see a lot of change here, both the tail end of this year and next year. That's a very high priority for our platform team right now.
I know we talked a little bit about security already, but specifically within the healthcare space, is there any plan for HIPAA or
I think
I think we did this one already, right?
HIPAA specifically?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Then from Travis, can you commit to continuing to build Bubble in a way that supports larger applications? Or maybe more generally, how is Bubble planning to support larger applications?
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, I think we've said a few times in the past, we want to be the platform where people can start and scale to IPO, and that's not changing. And I hope we didn't say anything over the last couple of days that make people think that is changing. So we definitely want to keep accommodating applications as they grow. So I'm not too sure. Do I commit to doing my best so that applications can stay on the platform? Yes. It's a lot of work, and then you have to look in the details of what we do. Josh described the engineering teams, the different teams that we have. That's really the mandate of the platform team. And the platform team's job is to ensure that Bubble works well at scale. If we only have small applications and not many users, things are working great today, right? The reason this team exists is because we every day have new applications that hit some bigger volumes, and then we need to handle that. And so it's a significant investment for us. I mean, it's almost a quarter of our engineering team, if not more. So yes, we're definitely putting a lot of resources on this. And our goal is still, to scale everyone till IPO and beyond.
I know we are of the belief that a lot of times things that'll help smaller companies will also help larger companies. What are the priorities where you see investing helps everyone versus what is uniquely an investment for enterprise?
So everything that is about reliability, speed, performance, I think helps everyone. Because if you're very fast for very large applications, then small applications go even faster and extremely snappy. Where we start talking about things that are really specific for very large companies and apps and enterprise, it's really around compliance usually, and that's a very important thing. But it's not necessarily where we're spending most of our energy today. And I don't think when we talk about large applications, that's what we're talking about here. But that's a type of work that starts becoming very specific to very large companies that just have requirements and regulatory requirements that do not apply to most of our users today.
I think one area that's important to larger companies as well is around collaboration. What does that roadmap look like, or how are you thinking about investing in collaboration on Bubble?
Well, I mean, the version control question that we just had, I think, is probably the most important thing that we can improve to ensure that large team can work well on Bubble. It's this and permissions, I think, at this point. That's really the two legs of collaboration. Yeah, I mean, we need to improve that. The changelog that Josh just mentioned, I think, is one step toward that direction, and that remains something important for us.
Devin's asking, will there be more transparency with workload units?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So we know that the tools for observing, this workflow took up this much workload are so-so, right? It can be difficult to reverse engineer why something took up as much workload as it did. I think our high-level tools are okay, the tools for identifying this part of your application used workload, I think was strong enough to let you zoom in on the critical areas for optimization, but I realized that some of you really want to get into the details and like really understand like, exactly why a certain thing took up as much units as it did, and figure out like how it's being calculated. From a transparency perspective, we're very open to talking about that. From a tooling perspective, it's on our radar, and we want to make investments there. I'm not sure exactly which investments we'll make over the next 3 or 4 months, but I think there's definitely room to improve there. And we've been talking internally about like what tools would be most helpful to people.
From Klaus, what is the last app that either of you built on Bubble?
It's going to be surprising. So as I got back into product, I actually decided to spend much more time in the editor. So I found myself build a new to-do app again. So not that I don't have a to-do list, but just wanted to do it a little bit differently, and it was a good way to get back into the product deep. So yeah, so little to-do things.
Better than Asana?
I'm not an Asana fan, so yes. But I know the marketing team loves Asana.
Marketing team does love Asana. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I've mostly done like little like workflow optimization things. Like we have an internal like Slack bot that we use to deploy code to production, and that interacts with like some Bubble apps that we've built to like assist with some of the features. So I've gone and like tweaked little things here and there. I haven't done a full end-to-end build for a while, but I did build myself a to-do app in Bubble as well, because I think that's sort of the go-to app design to have like your own personal take on it. Everyone has their own like little personal how should my to-dos work thing.
Nice. A couple of folks in the community are looking to know, will there be a desktop editor, meaning the capability to develop a desktop app with Bubble?
Hopefully one day, because our ambition is to be across all platforms. Let's see how mobile goes first and make sure that goes very well, and then we'll see. So I'm not going to commit to anything. In many ways, I think desktop is easier than mobile because it's the same screen. In fact, Slack is a web app that they've wrapped into something. So there's definitely ways to do that. To me, it's not where there is the highest ROI. I think mobile is extremely exciting because it's a completely new platform, and a huge part of the population really think, especially younger people, really think about applications on their phones, and that's very important for us to have that medium. Desktop application, I think, is a nice to have. At some point, I want to get there, but not anytime soon.
Not before dark mode, right?
No.
From Dylan, is there any news on updating some of the existing official Bubble plugins like multi-dropdown and rich text?
Yeah, these are pretty old and should either be updated or retired. So we'll see. Each of them is going to be a different case, and we'll have to take a hard look at things. These are like 8 years old for many of them. Still used by many people, so they're valuable, and I know users rely on them. But at the same time, I also know that the community often comes up with much better plugins because it's more recent. And so then it comes down to us investing in improving something or just retiring one of our plugins because the community does better. The way we do retire things so far, and we try to stick to that, though, we don't retire plugins in a way that would break applications. So it's not like it would break applications in production, but that would just say that for new applications, we push people to use a different solution. So, but it's going to be a judgment call on each of them. The good news is that it's a finite list. I think it's like 30, 40 that should be looked at. So it's not like an endless list of things to look at.
Michael wants to know, any resources for recommended design patterns for complex apps like Bubble or that Meta itself uses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the talk that Sam and Andrew gave yesterday is exactly about this. Like, how do we, and we've done a few webinars with our Meta team. So what we call the Meta team at Bubble, Meta is Meta, is having Bubble developers on our team that use Bubble every day to build some of our more important Bubble apps and assets. Like our Bubble.io app is one of them, and we have a few other things. Flusk now is part of this because a lot of Flusk is built on Bubble. And we organize a lot of events with them. We look into ways to have better content. I do think live conversations or like webinars work pretty well here because there are some concepts that are very well explained live, and sharing best practices, sharing a screen, I think goes a long way. So we're going to keep pushing there and see if we need to more things. Our documentation is also something that we try to invest more and more. I say Peter here, and I want to give him a shout out because our documentation has gotten much better over the last couple of years, and it's basically thanks to him. So you can give him a round of applause. That's one place where we've been a little too passive in the past. I mean, for the longest time, the user manual was something I wrote myself in 2016 or something, and that was not going at the level of details it should. And now we're catching up. So I think I would recommend, the content that our meta team pushes on the internet, which is a lot of video content, and the documentation that we push as a company, but that Peter has been helping us a great deal with.
I tried to get the e-manual going, but it never took off. Can you share?
You're the first one to try that one.
Can you share a little bit more about the offline capability for the new mobile apps?
Yeah, I can speak to that one. That's obviously one of the more exciting features with mobile, because one of the things that native mobile lets you do is have apps that don't just die when your internet connection goes away. Offline isn't like an all or nothing thing. There's different tiers of it, right? There's being able to load the sort of frame of your page. There's being able to have data that you've previously loaded be accessible. There's the ability to take actions while offline and have them sync when you get back online. And we're building incrementally from the most basic to the most sophisticated use case, right? So, what we're hoping to have this year is apps that are still very browsable offline, right? You can look around them, you can see data that's been downloaded already. It doesn't, you get nice, clear indicators that you're offline. You can customize those indicators, you have conditions, when offline, show this type thing. So that's what we're prioritizing. Stuff like being able to take actions and have it sync when you come back online is a somewhat more advanced feature, and that's a little further down the roadmap.
As the Bubble team grows, what's been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome this? And I think it would be great if both of you could answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Keeping everybody aligned and this I don't think comes as a surprise, and I think you ask the CEO of any scaling companies, they will tell you the same thing, but it's very real. When you go from 30 people to 100 and to 140, and I hope soon we'll get much bigger than this, because that means things are going well. It's challenging to make sure that 500 individuals or 140 individuals in our case are really aligned on one same thing. And so how do we overcome that? By being better leaders, communicate the vision better, being more focused, I think, which is one of the things we're operating right now, really having less priorities and allocating more resources toward those priorities is our way to do this. So this comes really from the top. Josh and I need to be very aligned ourselves on things and communicate that to everyone. You're never done with this. It's something you need to work on all the time. But I feel good about our progress to date. That's one thing I'll say.
Yeah, I'm mostly going to add on to Emmanuel's answer, because he said basically the same thing that was popping through my head when the question was asked. The focus piece is huge, and it's been a learning for both of us personally, I think, right? Because when you're a 5-person company, one person works on this, one person works on that. Well, you have 5 priorities when you have 5 people. But when you have 140 people, if you have 140 priorities, you go nowhere, right? And there's such a temptation, especially with us, to split our attention, because, just listen to the questions you all have been asking us, right? There's tugs in over 140 different directions for the kinds of things you want us to build, and that's just because there's so much opportunity with what Bubble is as a platform. So having the discipline to say no, you're hearing a number of answers from us right now that are along the lines of yes, someday, can't commit to the timeline, and us giving you that answer is us learning the hard way that we have to kick things down the road so that the things that are most critical path we can execute on, and execute on well with the full weight of the team behind it, so that we're all pulling in the same directions.
On our team, we say clear is kind, even if that means no.
Yep.
Matthew wants to know, there's some excellent third-party UI component libraries out there. Are there any plans to improve the in-app component library to make it easier and faster to build cohesive, responsive interfaces?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, so I think we pushed our component library maybe 2 years ago, and we haven't had necessarily the follow-on on that to keep improving it. So it certainly deserves some love and some time. At the same time, as we push into AI today and we start generating things with AI, I kind of want to see how the AI route goes for some time, because another way to think about the component library is to start generating things based on a prompt, and that basically what the 10-minute MVP project that we showed yesterday does in addition to a lot of other things. And so there might be ways to rethink a little bit the concept of components. So I'm still too early here to have a definite answer. What I'm certain that the status quo is not great today, that the question is how do we improve it, and I see several paths ahead of us that we need to explore.
Are there any plans to include a Figma import feature that imports Figma designs and converts them into a Bubble app?
In the spirit of using Josh's response about focus and everything, I would love to do that. Will there be that one day? I'm sure. When? I don't know. Yeah, but it's something that we keep hearing about this. I know there is a big opportunity. It would be great to get all Figma users as Bubble users. So I do see like a big opportunity for us as a business, but we also have a few things we want to do before that.
The other thing I'd say there is that's one of the areas where we're sort of hoping the ecosystem helps us out. Like I know people have been developing third-party plugins to help with this, and it's an area that we would love to see those plugins continue to flourish and be developed on, because it is a big lift to do it well. And we have a lot of things on our plate right now, but I would love a solution to exist, whether or not it's us that creates the solution.
From Hussein, what can be done to win over some of those traditional computer scientists or software developers and bring them into the no-code family?
Yeah. So I think there's a few blockers to winning over traditional developers. Part of it, I think a huge part of it, is simply perception, right? And one of the things that it's important for us to establish about Bubble, and I would love to enlist all of you in this mission, is for people to perceive Bubble as the next iteration of programming, right? Like, I remember when languages like Python and Ruby and PHP started becoming mainstream, there's like a little bit of pushback from engineers who were like used to Perl and C++, and like, those languages are for beginners, they're not like hardcore enough, they're not performant enough. Like there's like a lot of that conversation that happened, and benefit of hindsight, well, guess what? Those languages are what, like, modern software development, well, not PHP anymore, but like, sort of that era of languages that's how software is built today, right? And I want Bubble to follow that exact same trajectory. So, like when we think about integrating AI into Bubble and think about like what is, the day 2 of an AI generated app and what does iterating on that look like? That is what we want to create as the future of programming, and get CS students excited about like the possibilities of a career in this industry working with no-code tools like Bubble. So I think it's a perception game, and I think we can all work together to make it happen.
I want to take a slightly different angle on that question. As you're recruiting engineers to come join Bubble, what's your pitch? How do you get a traditional engineer excited?
Yeah, I mean, we have so many fascinating technical challenges at Bubble, right? Like everything from, what we're doing on the AI front and like figuring out how to get the latest, large language models working with the Bubble language, because under the hood, like Bubble is basically a special programming language, and integrating the two of them and like teaching models how to code, that's super exciting. On the database side of things, like figuring out, we are basically reinventing query optimization, because we're trying to figure out how to optimize queries without the same level of hinting and understanding from query developers that like SQL kind of expects you to already have. We're looking at scale questions, right? Like, how do you have a platform with millions of user-built applications all running in harmony without competing for computational resources? So I have a very easy time pitching Bubble to engineering candidates. I think there's just so much cool stuff we're working on.
From Daniel, are there any plans to add more JSON support both in the client and the workflow/data/custom events?
Yeah, I know this is a big request. Potentially, I'm not sure yet. We try to find ways when we can expand what you can do with Bubble and make things simpler. And here it's very much actually what they would do, because you can already do pretty much everything, but it becomes a little bit cumbersome in the UI to do this. We try to do it because we think it benefits everyone. It benefits new users and advanced users alike. And that's one of the contenders on the list. I can't commit on a timeline, but that's something that we look into, yeah.
From Samantha, how is Bubble's AI Assist trained? Are there workflows or designs that are part of the data? Can we train Assist ourselves?
Yeah, great question. I can't share everything because some of it's proprietary, but I can tell you a few things. First of all, we have not used any third-party applications to train Bubble Assist. It's all trained basically using stuff that our own team has produced. The idea of letting users actually train the models themselves using their own data is like super interesting. That's definitely a way down the roadmap project, right? Like our mission right now is to make sort of our core Bubble Assist functionality really, really, really good. But yeah, from a train perspective, like we are not using like our ecosystem's applications to train it. We don't think it's necessary, and we think it's actually technically easier to sort of develop our training data in-house.
From Faye, are there any plans to expand the color and font variable features so that we can use numeric variables across an app to make designs more consistent and make bulk editing easier?
I would give the same response I just gave for JSON parameters for workflows. That's the kind of things that would not necessarily add functionality to Bubble, but make things easier for people to build an app and maintain. So it's on the list of things we need to explore. I can't commit when we'll do this, But one thing I'd say is that the font variables like that we've created were very well received. We've not invested a ton of that so far after that first release, and I think there are opportunities there. We need to decide when to do that.
Maybe along similar lines from Joe, are there any plans to introduce a system for creating modular, reusable, conditional logic in Bubble, similar to Styles?
Same response. No, I mean, I know this can be a bit annoying to hear. We don't know it's something we think we're going to think about, but it's a true response, and this is like the flip side of us saying we're laser focused on a few things right now and want to do them very well, which I think ultimately will benefit everyone. If we say yes to everything, that's where you should start worrying.
From Brian, is there any chance we can get a scheduling tool for publishing our app updates? I have to stay up past midnight to not disrupt my customers' businesses whenever I need to publish updates.
Yeah, I know this is a feature request that we've had.
I think there's some like ecosystem and third-party solutions out there. Plus does that, right? So we haven't like talked about integrating that feature into the editor, but like Plus provides that capability, and I think we'd lean on that. Long term, we want to make that your app has been updated banner go away. Like the reason we have that banner is because of certain backend limitations that makes it hard for us to sort out like, is it safe to run a workflow that was initiated from an older version of the app? And as part of our mobile launch, we're actually making some changes on the mobile side of things to deprecate that banner, because on mobile, like you can't force refreshes, right? Like sometimes you'll have to like download the app from the App Store, and we want to eventually bring that capability to web as well. So long term, our goal is to like make that banner go away. Short term, I would say use Flusk, use our ecosystem.
Somebody on the design team paid Welby to ask this question. Any plans to add a dark mode on the editor?
Yeah, I hope so. Yes, the question is when, again. I do think this is something that makes our product look a little bit dated. Not that it looks bad, by the way. It's just now the trend is like into dark mode for pretty much every programming tool out there, even for the more non-technical people. So I think there is an opportunity for us to do that. This is actually not necessarily as easy as it sounds, given, like, again, our product is complicated. There are lots of pop-ups, lots of tabs because of all the things it does, and so we want to do it well. But yes, I hope so.
Yeah, and I would say that the design team has been thinking about it as they come up with everything that they've demoed of last day or two, like how would that work with dark mode? So we are building it with that in mind as like future compatible.
I hear a lot of the time, why can't you build dark mode? Why can't you do boosts every week, every month? Can you share a little bit about what makes this hard or takes time on the Bubble side?
Well, I mean, we have limited resources, and not just resources in terms of the number of people we have. It's important, I think, to have the team go in the same direction. If you start, as Josh was saying, if you have 140 people and 140 different priorities or 140 different features that people are doing, the result is not going to be good because you need things to be cohesive. I think one thing you start seeing when companies are much bigger than us and that the product goes in multiple directions, and you don't have the same UX depending on where you click because it's just different teams working on different things with different designers and different approaches to things. And that's, I think that's not good for everyone. So what made Bubble successful to date is that I think our UX tend to be very consistent because it's not a super simple tool. Like it's still real programming, and so you need to learn how to use it, and you can make mistakes and everything. And so having a cohesive UX is what made our success to date. And to keep this, it's important to centralize our efforts a little bit. So I'd rather have one feature done twice faster than two features in parallel, even though for the people that really care about the second feature that's going to wait longer, I know that it's not the most fun thing to hear, but that's what's needed to keep our product with a unified UX and something that is easy to learn for people.
Yeah. I can also answer with my engineering hat on a little bit as well. Like when we initially built the Bubble editor, Emmanuel and I working together, we built it like very interweaved, and like we designed the code to make it maintainable by two people, meaning that like we had everything depend on everything else. So if you change something over here, it can affect something way over here when we're building initially, because that's the only way you can build it with two people. That approach does not scale well to a team. And one of the things we're doing as we rebuild each tab of the editor and upgrade the UX of the editor is we're actually detangling it such that we can make changes. Like everything new that we've shipped lately is much easier to change in isolation than some of the older parts of the editor that have existed for 10 years, where if you change one thing, it can break something over there, which forces the team to go more slowly and can lead to like quality issues and bugs and cycles spent fixing those bugs. So from an engineering point of view, as we modernize the editor, we expect it to speed up in terms of how fast we can release things.
From Brenton, can you talk about the Bubble Ambassador program? How has that influenced Bubble's internal decision or direction so far?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's an opportunity to give a shout out to the community team who's behind this event. So you should also give them a round of applause. And so it's JV, Madeline, and Fede who are running this, and so the Ambassador program is run by them. So what it is basically, I knew I had to do this. We tried to do that a few times in the past and didn't put enough effort to make it work. So I'm confident now with nailing this and getting this right, but finding a few ambassadors. It's really ambassadors, so people that we trust can help us represent brands, the Bubble product, community, and brand in various markets. Our user base being so international, we can be everywhere, and there are a few things that are better done in person, and so it's great to have someone in Europe, in Paris, someone in Brazil, or other places. It's fairly new. We started that a few months ago, so we still need to learn. So we'll see how it works over time. How they have an impact on our direction is, so Fede runs a monthly with our ambassadors, so it's a way to surface feedback. One thing I'd say that it's not the only way we use to hear feedback. So if you're not an ambassador, you can still send us some feedback about things. The Slack community that we have it is a lot about the product, is very valuable to us. The forum I actually still spend a lot of time on the forum. I don't necessarily respond or like too much because I want to do that privately, but I'm still spending a lot of time on the forum. And so when people posting on the forums, this is still getting noticed. And just email to our success team. Our success team is the way for us to interact with the entire our user base. And so there are different ways to not necessarily have an impact, but provide feedback on our direction. Yeah.
And a plug for our beta program, if you haven't already signed up, make sure you head to bubble.io/beta and get involved in all of our early testing. A question from Tomas. Some people say that AI builders will make Bubble obsolete. What's your take on that? And we have 5 minutes left, so this is a nice light way to end the conversation.
Yeah. So I talked a little bit about this at our AI session yesterday, but the short version is I think that question actually has it backwards. Bubble is going to make AI app builders obsolete. And the reason why it comes down to what I was talking about in the keynote about day 1 versus day 2. Right now, AI app builders are totally new. People are just like blown away by the fact that you can even type in a prompt and have AI spit out code for a working application, and people are like really excited about that, as they should be, because it's new, it's neat, it's exciting. But the industry has not grappled with day 2 yet. They have not really seen what happens when a team of people use those apps and then trying to actually work with the generated code, build a real business around it, and scale that business. And I think when that actually starts happening, when it becomes more than just like a demo or a hype cycle, but actually a real production product, what the software industry is going to realize is that there are a lot of hard problems that AI does not just magically make go away. On the flip side, at Bubble, we've been working on day 2 for the last 10 years. We have been addressing the question of how do you have a way of communicating with the computer and having the computer communicate with you in plain, easy to understand human terms, such that when AI does spit something out, you as the developer can read what the AI has given you and actually understand it and work with it and evolve it and give helpful follow-on prompts to the AI, like, hey, I see you've built this workflow that way. I would actually rather it work somewhere this way, and have the AI be able to work with that and update it. So I fully expect that there's going to be this wave of cool demos and then this sort of gap of disappointment. And we're ready to step into that gap with an AI builder that works on day 1 with the cool, okay, cool, you can launch your thing to production after doing 10 minutes of work, but then also has a day 2 story of iterating, evolving it, and actually building a real business on top of it. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out over the next year or 2.
I'm going to ask one final question. You've covered so much ground in this session, and Bubblecon has shared so much amazing information. What do you want this audience to leave knowing, feeling, thinking about as we come to a close to the end of the conference?
Good question. You want to go first?
No, why don't you go?
Okay. All right. I think some of the main takeaways I would want this audience to have. First of all, lean on each other, right? One of the things we noticed at last Bubblecon and we've seen at this Bubblecon is it's an amazing opportunity to sort of build cross connections in the no-code industry, because you are all sort of at the forefront of how everyone is going to be building software in 5 years, right? And I think that your ability to help each other make business connections, hire each other, sell each other products, I think is going to be really, really helpful for your success and for helping this movement, go from the people in this room to literally everyone across the world. So that's one big takeaway I would have. Emmanuel, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope everybody goes home after this edition of Bubblecon, knowing that we'll do whatever we can and whatever is humanly possible to ensure that 10 years from now, Bubble is a standard way to build things, and that you being here as still what I would call early adopters, we've grown a lot, but we're still, I think, very small compared to the entire software development industry and all the kind of things you can do. And I think there are many, many more things we could be doing as a company. And 10 years from now, we'll be that standard, and we'll all feel very happy to have been here today and last year and maybe next year. Part of this smaller group that is really at the forefront of that revolution. And that, yeah, we're very hard at work to make it happen.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the AMA.